welcome Mike Serbinis and Chris Hadfield.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Well, welcome to Kobo, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you very much. Thanks. It is. I really like launches, and it's great.
We're thrilled to have you here on launch day. You'll see there's a huge crowd. We hold our town halls here every Tuesday.
Wow.
A little different this Tuesday is that we have probably more kids here than we did when Santa Claus came. So let me set the stage for everybody here, including a lot of the kids, because I'm going to take it back to when you were a kid. You were the top graduate of the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School and the U.S. Navy Test Pilot of the Year. You were selected by the CSA, Canadian Space Agency, to be an astronaut in 1992. You were Capcom for 25 shuttle missions, Director of NASA Operations in Star City, Russia, Chief of Robotics of at the Johnson Space Center, Chief of ISS Operations. I'm almost done.
Couldn't hold a job.
3 missions. three, not one, 3 missions to space, and most recently, commander of the International Space Station, the world spaceship. And all of this started when you were age 9. You watched Neil Armstrong take his first steps on the moon on TV, and no doubt many kids that saw that said, wow, I want to be an astronaut. But for you, something clicked, you were inspired. Tell us what happened next.
To watch something magnificent happen when you are young, to watch people try and do something that is right on the edge of impossible, or might even have been, by definition, impossible until that moment, can be hugely motivating. It can be not just entertaining, like of course the first moon landing had a great, it was the original reality TV, the first moon landing. I mean, in all of its unplanned scariness, it was just reality TV. Whatever happens, happens, and we're going to show the world. But at the same time, it was magnificently inspiring to a whole generation of people. There were more PhDs in the 8 or 10 year period after the first moon landing per capita than has ever happened in history. That singular event pushed people to do things, to take themselves to a level of capability that has never been seen before. For this 9-year-old kid, it was the absolute core of why I decided to become an engineer, and why I got a master's degree, and why I did research in low pressure fuel pumps, and why I did research in an external burning engine that can go transonically and hypersonically. All of those things were the child or grandchild of the inspiration that I was given as a kid. I think that is a large part of the point, is to try and do things through your own creativity, through your own daily choices, and through your actions that inspire others to rise above themselves. There are things that you can do as a Canadian kid that are right on the edge of magic, and if you can accomplish some of those things in your life, then you've really lived. And if you can inspire somebody else to do that, then you have really succeeded.
So fast forward to your first mission into space, 95. You are on the shuttle and you are docking with Mir.
And we had 2 main sensors telling us distance, and one said we were at 20 feet and the other said we were at 32 feet. And we were closing at 1/10 of a foot per second. If you do the math, that means you have more than 120 seconds worth of inaccuracy in your sensors. Mm-hmm. So we didn't know. After all this training and all this practice, now we don't have any way to reliably know how far we are from Mir. And it sounds simple, how far you are from Mir, but Mir is all this stuff sticking down. It's big pieces sticking down. There's not like a nice clean square thing that is Mir. It'd be like trying to say, how far am I from the ceiling? There's a lot of stuff up there. You'd have to choose the thing. And Mir was way worse than that. And so, and we were driving a big piece up into Mir. So we're like, what do we do now? Well, let's go back to basics. There's a camera in the back of the payload bay. I looked at it. I know the payload, this thing's 5 meters long. That's about 1 meter across the top. Looking up at Mir, I think if that's 5 meters, okay. Ken Cameron was our commander, said, Ken, we are 23 feet away and we need to push now. And so we're like, he looked at me, you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. So we pushed and we came in and did it all by eyeball. And we ended up docking 2 seconds off time, so everybody was happy. And then when we opened up the hatch and got to the end of the docking module, and we're docked, and the Russians on the other side, it was Sergei and Yuri and Tomas Reiter from Germany, and they're like pounding on the hatch and waving at me through the window. I get down to my end, and the Russians have said, we want this to be really secure, and they had tied up this hatch. It looked like the mummy. I mean, it had so much stuff wrapped around it, and I couldn't get at any of the mechanisms. And I'm trying to open the hatch, and Houston's, come on, we got to get the hatch open. And so I Swiss Army knife. So I get out my Swiss Army knife, and I start hacking into all this stuff and cutting, and I'm sawing through things. And my brother's a big Swiss Army knife fan, so at one point I turned around to the camera and floated my Swiss Army knife to wave at my brother. And if you go to the Swiss Army Knife Museum in Switzerland, they took that little clip, and they play it all the time there. And finally got all that stuff unbundled. But in reality, I ended up breaking into the Mir space station with a Swiss Army knife.
Awesome.
For a lot of my career, I really aimed to be a zero. And I really think it's something to just think about. Aim to be a zero initially. Don't convince yourself that you are God's gift to this problem when you first roll into it. Think about it. Actually try and listen to the people that have been dealing with the problem for a little while, because they probably understand the intricacies of it better than you do. And we ended up with a really productive crew. We set records for amount of science done. And the biggest part was people are worried that you can sustain a high work level for a while, but if there's a surge, if there's a demand, you're not going to be able to respond to that. But I really tried to position things, give people delegated authority, so that if we had to do an emergency spacewalk 4 days before we came home,
right,
like we did, we were actually poised to do it. And we could successfully send 2 guys out on 1 day's notice and basically heal and save the spaceship that we had positioned and thought and listened to each other carefully enough that we were ready to do that. So I really try and think about it, and I still don't get it right. Sometimes I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing, and then I kick myself afterwards going, you -1, you moron. You messed it up again. But I try.
So be a zero, I guess is the message.
Aim for zero.
Aim for zero.
And then be a +1 eventually if you can.
So let's talk about social media. It's something that we all pay attention to here quite a bit. By any measure, you've become a social media juggernaut, and unintended.
Juggernaut.
Unintended, but
yeah.
Some inspiration from your son. A lot of images posted to Twitter and other social media that many of our kids watched every day. That
right.
was like the breakfast conversation
right.
at our house for months.
Our house too, on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Space Oddity happens.
Right.
Can you tell us that story? When you were here last time, you told us a little bit about that story, and I thought it was just awesome. It'd be great for people to hear about it.
Yeah, Evan sent a note to me, Dad, you got to record Space Oddity. And I said, Space Oddity? Really? Kind of a weird, we'll use the word, psychedelic song from the 60s where the astronaut dies at the end. I was thinking, that's not a good song to do. Evan, if you rewrite the words so that the astronaut lives, I'll do the song. And so Evan came up with a really nice set of words. I stuck Bowie in one ear and did a karaoke track of it with me singing along and sent it. But when I listened to it, I thought I kind of liked how my voice sounded. It was thoughtful. I wasn't expecting it to be that way, but anyway, it came out. So I liked the vocal track. I sent it down to a friend of mine named M. Greiner, who's a really good Canadian musician, Juno Award level kind of, and she used to sing with Bowie. And I said, hey, I want to do Oddity with you, and she said, don't do Oddity. It's a terrible psychedelic song where the astronaut dies at the end. But I sent her my vocal track, and she said, hey, I like that. Can I put some piano underneath? And then a friend of hers, Joe Corcoran, great musician, she said, I got a friend who'd like to put some other production underneath. And I said, yeah, sure, so fine. So then they put this track together, and I was going, wow, that's way better than I thought it'd be. Let me do another vocal track on top. So there I am up on orbit with my iPad and GarageBand and listening to their track, and I laid a couple vocal tracks on top. Took about 2 or 3 takes. And then I was like, done. Hey, came out great, I'm happy. So Evan then sent a note saying, okay, now you need to do a video. Because you're in space, you got to do a video, You can't sound like you're in a studio. So then we had to get permission from Bowie, and I thought, what if I phone his legal office in London, England? His rights people. If they get a phone call from space, that might hurry the process. So I get, they get the number. I phone this nice lady at her desk. Hi, it's Chris Hadfield. I'm on the space station. I'd like to record a David Bowie video. And
Right.
and the funny part was, I talked to her for a minute, and she doesn't have a British accent. And I listened to her. I say, "Where are you from?" She says, "I'm from Canada." Like, perfect. This was meant to be. Anyway, so she went back to Bowie's people, and we had to pay a fee.
Yeah.
€8.
€8.
Cost €8. And by the time I landed, 18 hours later, 7 million people had seen it. I'm really pleased that many people know about space exploration and the space station, not just from a scientific side, but they see it as an extension of art and culture and humanity, and a new way to maybe think about that. And it's kind of an unexpected application of what we're doing up there, but I think a vital one, and why there are people on board.